My name is Julia Parker, and for 15 years my brother Mark treated me like a cautionary tale. His go-to example of what happens when you don't follow the proper career path. Now he stands frozen in Eleanor Winters' office, face drained of color, as she introduces me as Sentinel Systems' new owner and CEO. Funny how quickly my sister the dreamer transforms into my sister the boss when the tables turn. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm sitting in the corner office of Sentinel Systems Waterfront, headquarters in Boston, looking out at the harbor as ships drift by. The glass walls offer a panoramic view of the city I once felt too small for, too constrained by, too judged in. My assistant Natalie knocks gently before entering. "Your 2-hour appointment is here," she says, placing a fresh cup of coffee on my desk. It's the department heads for the quarterly review. Mark is among them. I feel a flutter in my stomach as I straighten my charcoal suit jacket. "Give me 5 minutes." As Natalie leaves, I swivel my chair toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, collecting my thoughts. The irony isn't lost on me that Mark now reports to me, the sister he spent years dismissing as unrealistic, impractical, destined for disappointment. Growing up in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Parker family had a very specific definition of success: steady career, predictable advancement, financial security without risk. My father, Robert, spent 30 years as a high school principal. My mother, Helen, was a respected nurse at the local hospital. They valued stability above all else, a reaction perhaps to their own parents' financial struggles. Mark followed the expected path perfectly. He excelled in his business classes at Boston University, joined a respected firm after graduation, married Tina, a dentist's daughter from a good family, bought the right house in the right suburb, and had 2 children right on schedule. Every Sunday dinner at our parents' house was dominated by Mark's latest promotion or bonus. "That's what happens when you follow the plan," my father would say, beaming with pride. Then there was me, the second child, the daughter, the one who couldn't seem to fit into the neatly arranged boxes the Parker family had constructed. It wasn't that I rejected success. I simply saw different paths to it. When I became fascinated with computer programming in high school, my family viewed it as a quirky hobby, not a serious pursuit. "Girls don't go into tech, Julia," my mother would say with concern. "There's no stability there. What about teaching, like your father, or nursing?" I still remember sitting at our kitchen table during my senior year, explaining my dream of attending MIT for computer science. My father frowned as he reviewed the tuition costs. "This is an impractical fantasy," he said. "BU has a perfectly good business program like Mark did." That night, Mark stuck his head into my bedroom with what appeared to be brotherly concern. "Look, Julia, I know it seems unfair, but Dad's right. These tech dreams, they're just not realistic. Do you know the failure rate of people in that industry? Be smart like me. Get a business degree, find a good company, work your way up. It's the safe path." I didn't listen. I applied to MIT anyway, secured a partial scholarship, and worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. While my family reluctantly attended my orientation, there was a distinct lack of enthusiasm. "We're supporting you," my mother said, "but we're concerned you're setting yourself up for disappointment." The nickname started during my sophomore year at MIT. I'd developed a security protocol that I believed could protect financial institutions from emerging cyber threats. When I came home for Thanksgiving, excited to share my breakthrough, Mark was there with Tina, recently engaged and basking in family approval. "So, how's our little dreamer?" Mark asked as I helped set the table. "Still saving the digital world?" "Actually," I said, trying to contain my excitement, "I've been working on a security protocol that could—" "Julia," my father interrupted, "let's not monopolize the conversation with computer talk. Mark and Tina have news about their house hunting. Later that evening, as the family gathered in the living room, my mother asked about my studies, a rare opening to share my passion. I began explaining my security protocol and its potential applications. Mark laughed, cutting me off. There she goes again, lost in dreamland. Meanwhile, in the real world, people need actual, practical solutions, not theoretical code. It's not theoretical, I protested. I've already tested it against Julia, Mark said with the condescending tone that would become all too familiar. Do you know how many college students think they've invented the next big thing? That's why they call them dreams. Most people eventually wake up. The family chuckled, and the nickname stuck. The Dreamer. Not as a compliment about vision or creativity, but as a dismissal, a judgment, a way to categorize my choices as unrealistic fantasies rather than legitimate aspirations. When I graduated with honors from MIT, my family attended the ceremony, but their congratulations felt perfunctory. At the celebratory dinner afterward, Mark, now a rising manager at a financial services firm, dominated the conversation with news of his promotion. When a family friend asked about my plans, my father answered before I could. Julia's still figuring things out, he said, the doubt evident in his voice. She has some ideas about computer security, but she'll probably look for something more established soon. I've actually been developing my security protocol, I interjected. I'm planning to start my own consultancy. Silence fell over the table, broken by Mark's chuckle. Always the dreamer, he said, raising his glass in a mock toast. Meanwhile, I'll be helping manage her student loan payments when reality hits. Despite their doubts, I launched Parker Digital Solutions from my tiny apartment in Cambridge. The early days were brutal. Cold calls to potential clients, nights spent refining my protocol, the constant struggle to be taken seriously as a young woman in a male-dominated field. I lived on ramen and coffee, pouring every dollar back into the business. Every Sunday dinner became an exercise in emotional endurance. Mark's achievements were celebrated at length, while my updates were met with thinly veiled concern. Any real clients yet? Mark would ask. Actually, yes, I'd respond. I just signed a contract with a local credit union. Small potatoes, he'd dismiss. They probably just felt sorry for you. How much longer are you going to chase this dream before getting a proper job? The turning point came during my third year of business. I'd refined my security protocol and was gaining traction with regional banks, but I needed capital to expand. After exhausting other options, I swallowed my pride and asked my family for a loan during Sunday dinner. $10,000? My father repeated, eyebrows raised. For your computer business? It's a cybersecurity firm, Dad, I corrected. I have contracts and revenue. I can show you the business plan. Mark leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Jules, be realistic. Your little hobby has gone on long enough. Sentinel Systems is hiring in their marketing department. No experience needed. I could put in a word. Sentinel Systems was Boston's fastest-growing cybersecurity firm, ironically working in the exact field I was trying to enter. Mark had joined their financial team 6 months earlier and never missed an opportunity to mention his rapid advancement. I don't want to work in marketing, I said, frustration mounting. I'm a developer. My protocol works. I just need capital to scale. Developers are a dime a dozen, Mark said dismissively. And most of them are men who've been coding since they were kids. You're chasing a fantasy. I looked around the table, my father's skepticism, my mother's worry, Mark's smug certainty that I would fail. Something hardened inside me. Never mind, I said quietly. I'll figure it out myself. That night, back in my apartment, I made a decision. I would stop seeking their approval, stop hoping for their support, stop attending the Sunday dinners. That left me feeling diminished. I would build my business on my own terms, and either succeed or fail without their judgment clouding my vision. I stopped calling home except for holidays and my parents' birthdays. I poured everything into Parker Digital Solutions, refining my protocol, building client relationships, and slowly expanding my team. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. At a cybersecurity conference in Boston, I gave a presentation on emerging vulnerabilities in financial security systems. The room was only half full. I was an unknown speaker in a minor time slot, but one attendee remained afterward, asking detailed, insightful questions. "Your approach is innovative," he said finally, "particularly your protocol's adaptive response system. I haven't seen anything like it in the market." He introduced himself as Richard Torres, a veteran cybersecurity expert and venture capitalist focusing on emerging technologies. "Let's continue this conversation," he said, handing me his card. "My firm might be interested in what you're building." That meeting changed everything. Richard not only invested in Parker Digital Solutions, but became a mentor, providing guidance, connections, and most importantly, unwavering belief in my vision. With his backing, I expanded my team, refined my offerings, and began competing for larger clients. 2 years into our partnership, Richard made a surprising suggestion over lunch. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." "Have you considered acquisition as a growth strategy?" he asked. I looked up from my salad, confused. "You mean acquiring other companies? We're not large enough for that." "Not necessarily," he said. "There's another approach. Several mid-sized security firms have outdated protocols but established client bases. They need your innovation. You need their scale." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a detailed analysis of potential acquisition targets, with one name circled, in red, Sentinel Systems. I nearly choked on my water. "Sentinel? That's where my brother works. They're not mid-sized. They're one of Boston's fastest-growing firms." Richard's expression was carefully neutral. "Their growth is based on client acquisition, not technological innovation. Their core security protocols are 5 years out of date. They're vulnerable to newer threats, and their technical team knows it. More importantly," he added, "they're over-leveraged. Their CEO, Eleanor Winters, is looking for a quiet investment bailout before these issues become public." I stared at the folder, mind racing. "You want me to acquire the company where my brother has been building his career? The same brother who's been telling everyone I'm a failure?" Richard shrugged. "I'm suggesting a smart business move that benefits both companies. The personal element is an interesting coincidence." For weeks, I deliberated. The business case was solid. Sentinel needed my protocol, and I needed their client base and infrastructure. But acquiring my brother's company, becoming effectively his boss, felt like a plot from a revenge fantasy, not a sound business decision. In the end, practicality won. Working through Richard and a team of lawyers, we structured a deal where Parker Digital Solutions would acquire a controlling interest in Sentinel Systems, with me stepping in as CEO to oversee integration of our technologies. The negotiations were conducted with Eleanor Winters directly, under strict confidentiality. No one at Sentinel, including Mark, knew who was acquiring them until the deal was finalized. Which brings me to this moment, preparing to face a room of department heads, my new employees, including the brother who never believed in me. I take a deep breath, straighten my notes, and head to the conference room. The department heads rise as I enter, faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Eleanor Winters stands at the head of the table, elegant and composed despite the circumstances that forced her to sell. "Good afternoon," she says. "As you know, Sentinel Systems has merged with Parker Digital Solutions. I'd like to introduce you to your new CEO, who will be guiding Sentinel through this transition and beyond." She gestures toward me as I take my place beside her. This is Julia Parker, founder of Parker Digital and the developer of the security protocol that will be revolutionizing our offerings. Mark's face goes through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally a dawning horror as he realizes that his dreamer sister now controls the fate of his career. Julia brings 15 years of experience in cybersecurity. Innovation, Eleanor continues smoothly. Her protocol has been recognized as breakthrough technology by industry leaders, and she'll be implementing it across all Sentinel products effective immediately. As I begin my presentation outlining the transition plan, I can feel Mark's eyes boring into me. The brother who dismissed my dreams, who mocked my ambitions, who offered me an entry-level marketing position out of pity, now sits at a table where I stand at the head. After the meeting, as the department heads file out with their transition packets, Mark lingers behind, clearly struggling to process this new reality. How? He finally asks when we're alone. How is this possible? I regard him calmly, experiencing not the triumph I might have imagined, but something more complex. A mixture of professional satisfaction and personal sadness for all the support we might have offered each other. It's possible because while you were calling me the dreamer, I was building something real, I say quietly. While you were telling our family I would fail, I was innovating technology that Sentinel now desperately needs. He shakes his head, still struggling to reconcile the sister he dismissed with the CEO standing before him. Does the family know? Do Mom and Dad know that my company acquired yours? I finish for him. Not yet. I haven't been to Sunday dinner in quite some time, if you recall. Not since you all made it clear my work wasn't worth your interest. Mark has the grace to look uncomfortable. That was years ago, Julia. Things change. Yes, I agree, gathering my materials. They certainly do. As he turns to leave, visibly shaken, I add, Department head meetings are Tuesdays at 10 a.m. I expect full reports on your division's financials by Friday. And Mark, don't be late. Later that evening, as I sit in my new office reviewing transition documents, Natalie brings me a cup of tea. Your brother has called 3 times, she informs me. And your parents just called as well. Of course they have. Now that I've succeeded, now that my dream has manifested as something tangible, impressive, impossible to dismiss, suddenly the Parker family is interested in what I'm doing. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. Mark told us about the company. We're so proud of you, honey. Can you come to dinner on Sunday? Your father wants to hear all about it. After 15 years of dismissal, of judgment, of being the family cautionary tale, I'm suddenly worthy of their attention. Not because they've come to value my vision or understand my path, but because external validation, money, status, power, has finally made my success legible to them. I place the phone face down on my desk and turn back to the harbor view. The question isn't whether I'll attend Sunday dinner. The question is who I want to be in this moment of reversal. Do I want to savor the vindication, reject them as they rejected me, or find some new path that honors both my accomplishment and the possibility that relationships, like people, can grow beyond their limitations? As the office lights dim across the harbor and the day shifts to evening, I realize the true measure of success isn't proving skeptics wrong, even when they're family. It's building something meaningful and authentic, regardless of who recognizes its value. Tomorrow, I'll begin the work of integrating 2 companies, of aligning teams, of fulfilling the potential that Richard saw in me and my technology. I'll make decisions about Sentinel's future, including Mark's role within it. I'll lead from a place of vision and opportunity, not resentment or revenge. And Sunday? Sunday is still days away. I have plenty of time to decide who I want to be at that dinner table, not just as Sentinel's new owner, but as Julia Parker, the woman whose dreams were real all along. The department head meeting runs 20 minutes over schedule. By the time everyone files out of the conference room, the late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the Boston harbor. I remain seated, reviewing my notes while the reality of the day settles around me. Acquiring Sentinel Systems was a sound business decision. Their established client base, combined with my superior security protocols, creates a powerhouse in the cybersecurity market. Yet I can't deny the personal satisfaction of seeing Mark's face when Eleanor introduced me as the new CEO. Natalie enters with a tablet in hand. "Your schedule for tomorrow is confirmed. The IT integration team wants an additional hour in the morning, and Richard called to check how things went today." "Tell Richard it went as expected," I reply, gathering my papers. Some shock, some resistance, mostly professional curiosity about what changes are coming. "And your brother?" she asked carefully. Natalie has been with me for 3 years, long enough to have heard snippets about my family dynamics. "Also, as expected," I say, keeping my voice neutral. "Schedule a one-on-one with him tomorrow after the IT meeting. We need to establish clear boundaries going forward." As Natalie leaves, my office phone rings. The caller ID shows Mark's extension. I let it go to voicemail, not ready for that conversation without preparation. 2 minutes later, my cell phone buzzes with a text from him. "We need to talk. This is crazy. Dinner tonight?" I pocket my phone without responding and head toward the executive elevator. As the doors slide open, I find myself face-to-face with Eleanor Winters, Sentinel's now former CEO. "Julia," she says with a calm professionalism that betrays nothing of the fact that she just sold her company. "Walk with me?" We descend in silence to the parking garage where her sleek Mercedes waits. Eleanor is 55, with steel gray, haircut in a precise bob and a wardrobe of impeccably tailored suits. She built Sentinel from nothing 15 years ago, making her original fortune during the first .com boom. "Interesting first day," she comments as we reach her car. "Especially the moment your brother realized who his new boss is." "You knew," I state rather than ask. During acquisition talks, I'd been careful never to mention my personal connection to Sentinel. Eleanor's smile is slight but unmistakable. Boston's tech world is smaller than people think. I did my due diligence on Parker Digital before entering negotiations. The family connection was noteworthy. "It wasn't why I pursued the acquisition," I say firmly. "Of course not. You pursued it because my company has cash flow and customer relationships while yours has superior technology. It's a textbook symbiotic acquisition." She opens her car door, then pauses. "But don't pretend there isn't satisfaction in this particular power shift. I've been a woman in tech for 30 years, Julia. I recognize the look of someone who's finally being seen." Before I can respond, she adds, "You'll do well with Sentinel. Your security protocol is exactly what we need. Mark will be your biggest challenge, not because he isn't competent, but because men like him struggle when their narratives are disrupted. How you handle him will set the tone for your entire leadership." With that cryptic advice, she slides into her car and drives away, leaving me standing in the dim garage, contemplating the complexity of what lies ahead. By the time I reach my Beacon Hill apartment, I have 6 missed calls. 3 from Mark, 2 from my mother, and 1 from my father. I ignore them all, pouring myself a glass of wine as I kick off my heels and sink onto my sofa. The apartment, a spacious 2-bedroom with exposed brick and harbor views, is a far cry from the cramped studio where I launched Parker Digital. I think back to those early days, coding until my vision blurred, living on instant noodles and determination. No family support, no connections, just a MIT degree and absolute conviction that my security protocol could revolutionize how financial institutions protected client data. My phone buzzes again with a text from my mother. "Mark told us everything. Your father and I are in shock. Please call us, honey." Of course they're in shock. Their daughter, the dreamer, the unrealistic one, the cautionary tale, has not only succeeded, but now controls the company they held up as the model of corporate achievement, the company where their golden child built his career. I'm composing. A non-committal response when my doorbell rings. Security calls up, "Ms. Parker, your brother Mark is here requesting to see you." For a moment, I consider turning him away, but that would be avoiding the inevitable. Better to establish the new boundaries now, clearly and professionally. "Send him up," I tell security. Mark arrives at my door looking distinctly uncomfortable, still in his work clothes, but with his tie loosened and hair slightly disheveled. He's 38, 4 years my senior, with the same dark hair and hazel eyes as me, though his features have a sharpness mine lack. "Nice place," he says as I let him in, his eyes taking in the spacious apartment with obvious surprise. "Must be recent." 3 years, I correct him. "Not that you'd know since you've never visited." He has the grace to look embarrassed as he follows me to the living area. "I didn't know where you lived until I looked up your address in the company directory today. That's telling, isn't it?" I don't respond to this acknowledgement of our estrangement, instead gesturing for him to sit while I remain standing. "What do you want, Mark?" "An explanation would be a start," he says, a hint of the old condescension creeping into his voice. "How did this happen? One day I'm finance director at a growing company. The next, my little sister who plays with computers is supposedly my boss? It doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect business sense," I counter, my voice cool. Parker Digital developed a security protocol that outperforms anything on the market. Sentinel has an established client base but outdated security architecture. Eleanor recognized the value proposition and accepted my offer. "Your offer?" Mark laughs, but it's hollow. "Where would you get that kind of money? Sentinel is valued at—" "I know exactly what Sentinel is valued at," I interrupt. "I've spent the last 3 months reviewing your financials. I know about the security breaches you've been hiding from clients. I know about the technical debt your development team has been accumulating, and I know about the loan covenants you're in danger of violating." The color drains from his face. As finance director, Mark would be intimately familiar with these vulnerabilities, the same issues that made Sentinel an attractive acquisition target. "This can't be real," he mutters, more to himself than to me. "Julia the Dreamer? Buying Sentinel?" "Julia the CEO," I correct him. "And I secured backing from Torres Ventures, plus a consortium of investors who recognize the value of my technology. The deal is done, Mark. The only question now is whether you can adapt to the new reality." He stares at me as if seeing me for the first time. In many ways, he is. For 15 years, he's maintained an image of me as his impractical little sister chasing tech fantasies. That image has now collided with the reality of me as a successful entrepreneur who outmaneuvered him in his own domain. "Does this give you satisfaction?" he asks finally. "Humiliating me in front of my colleagues? Making me report to my baby sister?" "This isn't about you," I say, though we both know that's not entirely true. "It's about building something meaningful, something innovative. Sentinel needs what Parker Digital has developed. Together, we can create security solutions that neither company could achieve alone." "Save the corporate speak," he snaps. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. They want to know why you didn't tell them you were successful enough to buy a major company." "Why would I?" I ask simply. "When have they ever shown genuine interest in my work? When have you?" The question hangs between us, heavy with 15 years of dismissal, of "how's the dreamer doing?" jokes at family gatherings, of conversations, redirected whenever I tried to share my professional progress. Mark runs a hand through his hair, a gesture I remember from childhood when he was cornered. "That was different. We didn't understand what you were doing with all the tech talk." "You never tried to understand," I correct him. "You decided my path wasn't valid because it didn't match yours, and you made sure the entire family saw me through that lens." He starts to object, then stops, seeming to recognize the truth in my words. After a moment, he tries a different approach. So what happens now? Am I fired? Is this your revenge? The question surprises me. Despite everything, it hadn't occurred to me to fire Mark. You're a competent finance director, I say. The company needs financial stability during this transition. Your job is secure as long as your performance warrants it. Relief flashes across his face, followed quickly by wariness. And the reporting structure? You'll report to me like all department heads, I confirm. I expect professionalism, transparency, and adaptation to our new security priorities. Can you deliver that, Mark? He sits silently for a long moment, processing this new reality. The brother who once told me to get a proper job, now being asked if he can professionally serve under my leadership. I can be professional, he says finally, but this is going to take some adjustment. For everyone, I acknowledge. Starting with how we communicate about this to the family. I'm not interested in Sunday dinner triumphalism, Mark. This is a business acquisition, not a family drama. He nods slowly, though we both know it's inevitably both. They want to see you, he says. They've been calling me nonstop since I told them. I'll deal with Mom and Dad on my own terms, I reply, moving toward the door to signal our conversation is ending. In the meantime, I need the Q3 financial projections updated with the new consolidated structure by Friday. Mark stands, straightening his tie in a gesture that seems to help him reclaim some professional dignity. At the door, he pauses. For what it's worth, Julia, your security protocol, it's impressive. The tech team has been trying to develop something similar for years. Coming from Mark, this reluctant acknowledgement is momentous. Perhaps the first time he's ever recognized the value of my work without qualification or dismissal. I know, I reply simply. That's why I bought the company. After he leaves, I pour another glass of wine and step onto my balcony overlooking the harbor. The city lights shimmer on the dark water, boats moving silently through the night. 15 years of striving, of being dismissed, of building something from nothing while my family watched with skepticism, have culminated in this moment of professional validation. Yet instead of triumph, I feel a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction at finally being seen. Sadness for all the support and connection lost along the way. My phone rings again. My mother. This time I answer. Julia? Her voice is tentative, uncertain, so different from the confident tone she uses when discussing Mark's achievements. Is it true? Did you really buy Sentinel? Hello, Mom, I say, neither confirming nor denying. How are you? How am I? She sounds flustered. I'm confused. Mark says you're his boss now, that you own the company. How is that possible? Why didn't you tell us you were doing so well? The hurt in her voice seems genuine, which only irritates me more. I stopped sharing my accomplishments when it became clear no one in the family was interested, I reply, keeping my voice even. Every time I tried to talk about my work, the conversation shifted to Mark's promotions, or Tina's charity work, or Dad's retirement plans. That's not fair, she protests. We always asked about your computer business. No, Mom. You asked when I was going to get a real job. There's a difference. Silence stretches between us, filled with 15 years of misunderstanding and missed connections. Your father wants to talk to you, she says finally. We both do. Will you come to dinner on Sunday? I think of Eleanor's words about how I handle this situation, setting the tone for my leadership. Gloating would be satisfying but ultimately hollow. Complete rejection would only perpetuate the estrangement. Perhaps there's a middle path, one that acknowledges the past while leaving room for a different future. I'll come, I say. But I'm not discussing the acquisition in detail. This is a business matter. not family entertainment. Of course, she agrees quickly. We just want to see you, Julia. It's been so long. After we hang up, I remain on the balcony, watching the city lights and contemplating the week ahead. Tomorrow, I'll begin the complex process of integrating two companies, aligning teams around a shared vision, and establishing my leadership with employees who until yesterday had no idea who I was. And on Sunday, I'll face my family as someone fundamentally different from the dreamer they've dismissed for years. Not just a successful entrepreneur, but a woman who no longer needs their validation to know her worth. Wednesday morning arrives, with a flurry of integration meetings. The Sentinel IT team is simultaneously resistant to change and excited about the possibilities of my security protocol. Their lead developer, a bearded man named Alan, who's been with Sentinel since its early days, squints at my architecture diagrams with professional skepticism that gradually transforms into reluctant admiration. This adaptive response system, he says, pointing to a section of code projected on the conference room screen. I've never seen anything like it. How did you solve the latency problem? For the next hour, we dive deep into technical details, the language of algorithms and security architecture flowing between us. This is where I'm most comfortable, talking code, solving problems, building something elegant and effective. By the time we break for lunch, Alan and his team are cautiously on board with the integration roadmap. As they file out, I notice Mark hovering in the doorway, waiting for our scheduled one-on-one. He's perfectly groomed in a charcoal suit, projecting the corporate competence that has always been his armor. The tech team seems impressed, he observes as he takes a seat across from me. That's not easy to accomplish. Alan's been shooting down new security approaches for years. Because none of them solved the fundamental vulnerabilities, I reply, pulling up Sentinel's financial documents on my tablet. Now, about these projections. Your revenue forecasts assume a 15% growth rate, but customer acquisition has been slowing for the past 3 quarters. Mark shifts into financial director mode, walking me through his assumptions and calculations. Despite our personal complications, I have to admit he's good at his job, thorough, analytical, with a solid grasp of Sentinel's financial position. If he's resentful about reporting to his younger sister, he's keeping it professional. As we finish reviewing the numbers, I broach the topic we've been avoiding. We need to discuss how we're going to work together, Mark. The entire company is watching us, waiting to see if family dynamics will disrupt business operations. He leans back, studying me with an expression I can't quite read. Honestly, I'm still processing all this. 2 days ago, you were my little sister who'd chosen an unconventional path that our family didn't understand. Now you're my boss, and apparently a tech genius who developed something valuable enough to acquire Sentinel. He shakes his head. It's a lot to reconcile. For me as well, I acknowledge. For years, you've been the voice in family gatherings telling everyone I was chasing unrealistic dreams. Now I have to establish my authority as CEO without it seeming like personal retribution. Mark winces slightly at the reference to his past dismissals. I didn't understand what you were building, he admits. The tech world isn't my domain. In finance, we value predictable paths, proven models. Your approach seemed risky. It was risky, I confirm. Most innovation is, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. We sit in silence for a moment, 15 years of misunderstanding hanging between us. Finally, Mark speaks again. I can be professional about this, Julia. Whatever our past, I respect the company too much to undermine its leadership, even if that leadership is unexpected. It's not an apology for years of dismissal, but it's a start. An acknowledgement that our relationship has fundamentally changed and that he's willing to adapt to the new reality. Good, I say, because Sentinel needs stability right now, especially in finance. The market will be watching this acquisition closely, looking for any signs of integration problems. He nods, shifting back to business. I've already started revising the forecasts to account for the merged technology stack. Initial projections suggest we could see a 30% increase in enterprise contracts if the security protocol performs as advertised. It will, I assure him. In fact, I want to accelerate the integration timeline. The sooner we can demonstrate the enhanced security capabilities to key clients, the stronger our position against competitors. For the next hour, we work through implementation schedules and financial implications, finding a professional rhythm that temporarily transcends our complicated personal history. By the time Mark leaves with a list of action items, I feel cautiously optimistic that we might establish a working relationship despite everything. The rest of the week passes in a blur of integration meetings, client calls, and team restructuring. I deliberately maintain a high visibility presence at Sentinel's offices, walking the floors, introducing myself to employees at all levels, and clearly articulating the vision for our combined companies. Most staff respond with cautious optimism. They've known Sentinel needed technological revitalization, and my security protocol has already impressed the technical teams. There are pockets of resistance, particularly among longtime Sentinel executives who were close to Eleanor, but even they can't deny the business logic of the acquisition. Through it all, Mark maintains professional composure. If his direct reports are aware of our relationship, they don't show it. In meetings, he addresses me as Julia, or Ms. Parker, presenting his financial analyses with the same precision he would for any CEO. Only Natalie notices the strain. Your brother keeps watching you when he thinks no one is looking, she observes after a particularly long strategy session. Not angrily, more like he's trying to solve a puzzle. I'm a puzzle to my entire family, I reply, reviewing my notes for the next meeting. They built a narrative about me that no longer fits, and they don't know how to revise it. By Friday afternoon, the initial shock of the acquisition has settled into a tentative new normal. I've approved the integrated organizational chart, signed off on the technical implementation plan, and scheduled presentations with our top 5 clients to introduce the enhanced security offerings. As I'm preparing to leave for the weekend, Natalie appears in my doorway. Richard Torres is here to see you, she announces. He says he was in the neighborhood. Richard enters with his characteristic energy, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that somehow never looks stiff on his athletic frame. At 62, with salt and pepper hair and laugh lines around his eyes, he projects the confident ease of someone who has nothing left to prove. So, he says, settling into a chair across from me, how does it feel to be Boston's newest tech CEO? Busy, I admit. Integration is always complex, and this one has additional complications. Richard grins. You mean the brother who never believed in you now reporting to you? I'd call that poetic justice. I shake my head, though I can't help smiling. Richard has heard enough about my family dynamics over the years to understand the irony of the situation. It's not about justice, I say. It's about building something meaningful with the combined strengths of both companies. Of course, he agrees, though his eyes twinkle with amusement. And the fact that Mark Parker now has to acknowledge his sister's success in front of the entire Boston tech community is merely an incidental benefit. I laugh despite myself. I won't deny there's satisfaction in being recognized after years of dismissal, but revenge is a poor foundation for leadership. Richard's expression grows more serious. You're right, of course, though I hope you're allowing yourself to feel some pride. What you've built is remarkable, Julia. Not just the technology, but your journey to this point. His words warm me. From our first meeting at that tech conference 4 years ago, Richard has been more than an investor. He's been a mentor, a champion, the voice of experience guiding me through the challenges of scaling Parker Digital. I'm seeing my parents on Sunday, I tell him. First time in over a year. Richard raises an eyebrow. Interesting timing. How are you feeling about that? I consider the question carefully. Conflicted. Part of me wants them to finally see what I've built, to understand that my dreams were always rooted in genuine innovation. But another part recognizes that their validation isn't necessary anymore. I've proven my worth, with or without their recognition. Both can be true, Richard observes. You can appreciate their recognition while knowing you don't require it. He stands to leave, then adds, just remember, how you handle success reveals more about your character than how you handle setbacks. Don't let the satisfaction of being right overshadow the greater satisfaction of moving forward. His advice stays with me as I head home, the weekend stretching ahead with Sunday's family dinner looming on the horizon. For 15 years, I've been the family disappointment, the dreamer whose impractical choices were contrasted with Mark's solid career path. Now those roles have dramatically reversed, and I'm not entirely sure how to navigate this new terrain. Saturday brings no clarity. I spend the day alternating between reviewing integration documents and contemplating what to wear to Sunday dinner, a decision that suddenly seems fraught with significance. Too formal suggests I'm trying to impress them. Too casual might undermine my new position. In the end, I select a simple blue dress that splits the difference. Professional, but not ostentatious. By the time I pull into my parents' driveway in Worcester on Sunday afternoon, my stomach is knotted with tension. The modest colonial where I grew up looks exactly the same. My father's immaculate lawn, my mother's carefully tended flower beds, the American flag by the front door. Time seems to have stood still here, even as everything has changed. My mother opens the door before I can knock, uncertainty written across her face. At 64, Helen Parker remains active and fit, her nurse's disciplined approach to health, evident in her posture and clear skin. Only the deepened lines around her eyes and the silver threading through her dark hair mark the passage of time since I last saw her. "Julia," she says, pulling me into an awkward embrace. "You look different." "It's been a while," I acknowledge, following her into the house. The familiar scent of roast chicken and lemon polish wraps around me, triggering memories of Sunday dinners past, dozens of meals where Mark's achievements were celebrated, while my updates were met with polite confusion or thinly veiled concern. My father waits in the living room, rising from his recliner as I enter. Robert Parker, retired high school principal, stands straight despite his 68 years, his handshake firm as he greets me. "Well," he says, his tone caught somewhere. Between pride and bewilderment, "Mark tells us you've been busy." "You could say that," I reply, taking a seat on the couch. "How have you been, Dad? How's retirement treating you?" He launches into an update about his golf game and volunteer work at the Historical Society, safe topics that delay the conversation we're all anticipating. My mother disappears to check on dinner, returning to announce that Mark and Tina are running late but should arrive shortly. "So?" my father says during a lull, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. "This company of yours. Mark says you've become quite successful." The understatement almost makes me laugh. "Parker Digital has developed industry-leading security protocols," I confirm. "We've grown significantly over the past few years." "Enough to buy Sentinel," he presses. "Mark's company." Sentinel needed technological innovation, I explain, keeping my voice neutral. Parker Digital needed expanded market reach. The acquisition benefits both companies. My mother returns from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "But how did you afford it, Julia? These companies, they must be worth millions." Before I can answer, the front door opens and Mark enters with Tina and their 2 children, Emma, 12, and Jack, 9. The children greet me with the cautious politeness reserved for rarely seen relatives, while Tina's smile seems strained around the edges. "Sorry we're late," Mark says, helping Jack with his jacket. "Soccer practice ran over." Dinner is a study in carefully navigated tension. My mother has prepared all my childhood favorites: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, a peace offering of sorts. Conversation skirts the edges of the acquisition, focusing instead on the children's activities, my parents' recent cruise, Tina's volunteer work at the hospital. It's only when my mother serves coffee and apple pie that my father broaches the subject directly. "Julia," he says, setting down his fork, "we owe you an apology." The statement hangs in the air, unexpected and heavy with implication. My mother nods in agreement, while Mark studies his coffee cup with sudden intensity. "For years," my father continues, "we didn't understand what you were building. Your mother and I. We come from a generation that values traditional career paths, stability, clear advancement. Your approach seemed risky, undefined. We worried," my mother adds softly. "Every time you talked about algorithms and protocols, we saw a path leading nowhere. We couldn't visualize your success because it didn't look like anything we recognized. So you dismissed it," I say, not accusingly, but stating a fact. "You called me the dreamer and waited for me to fail." Mark shifts uncomfortably. "That was mostly me," he admits. "Mom and Dad were concerned, but I was the one who turned it into a joke." My father shakes his head. "We all participated, Julia. We prioritized what we understood. Mark's corporate advancement over what we didn't. That was our failure, not yours." The acknowledgement is unexpected, touching something deep inside me that I'd thought long calloused over. For 15 years, I'd carried the weight of their disapproval, their confusion, their subtle and not-so-subtle suggestions that I was wasting my potential on technological fantasies. "I tried to tell you," I say quietly. "I tried to explain what I was building, why it mattered, but none of you wanted to hear it." "Because it scared us," my mother confesses. "Your father and I grew up with parents who struggled financially. Security became everything to us. Mark's path made sense. Clear promotions, steady advancement. Yours seemed—" She searches for the right word. "Uncertain," my father supplies, and we equated uncertainty with risk with failure. We sit in silence for a moment, the years of misunderstanding laid bare between us. Finally, Mark speaks up. "For what it's worth, your security protocol is brilliant," he says, meeting my eyes directly. "The entire technical team is talking about it. Even Alan, who hates everything, says it's revolutionary." Coming from Mark, this professional acknowledgement means more than any apology could. For the first time, he's seeing me not as his impractical little sister, but as an innovator who has created genuine value. "I'd like to understand," my father says carefully. "If you're willing to explain it in terms an old school teacher might grasp, I'd like to know what you've built." The request is 15 years late, but sincere. I take a deep breath and begin to explain in simplified terms how my adaptive security protocol works, how it identifies emerging threats, how it responds to attacks in real time, how it learns and evolves to protect sensitive data. To my surprise, they listen, really listen, asking questions, nodding along, making connections to concepts they understand. My mother relates it to how the immune system adapts to new pathogens. My father finds parallels to how educational systems evolve to address changing student needs. That's exactly right, I confirm, a strange lightness growing in my chest. It's an adaptive system that evolves with the threat landscape. As the evening winds down, Mark pulls me aside while the others are distracted with dessert and family photos. "I was wrong about you," he says simply. "For years, I was so certain I knew what success looked like that I couldn't see you were creating something valuable, just in a different way than I understood." Technology and finance approach problems differently, I acknowledge, but both have their place in building something sustainable. He nods. a rueful smile tugging at his lips. It's going to be strange, you know. Working for my little sister after years of thinking I had all the answers. Think of it as an opportunity to expand your perspective, I suggest. Just as I'm learning about the financial aspects of running a larger company. As I prepare to leave, my parents walk me to the door, my mother pressing containers of leftovers into my hands as she has since my college days. "We're proud of you, Julia," my father says, his voice rough with emotion. "Not just because you've become successful, but because you believed in your vision when none of us did. That takes a special kind of courage." On the drive back to Boston, streets slipping by in the gathering darkness, I reflect on the evening's unexpected revelations. The family that once dismissed my dreams now struggles to reconcile their narrative with my reality. The brother who coined me the dreamer now reports to me professionally. The parents who couldn't understand my path now ask to learn about what I've built. It's not a fairy tale ending. Too much time has passed. Too many dismissive comments still echo. Too many Sunday dinners were spent feeling invisible. But perhaps it's a beginning of something new. A relationship based not on their approval or my need for validation, but on mutual respect for our different paths and perspectives. As the Boston skyline appears on the horizon, lights glimmering, against the night sky, I think about tomorrow's challenges: merging company cultures, implementing the security protocol across Sentinel's client base, establishing my leadership with employees still adjusting to the acquisition. But for the first time in 15 years, those challenges won't be accompanied by the weight of family disapproval. I've proven my worth, not just to them, but more importantly, to myself. The dreamer has awakened to find her reality more powerful than anyone imagined, her vision clearer and more valuable than even she dared hope. And that, perhaps, is the truest measure of success. Not the acquisition of a company, not the vindication of being right, but the freedom to build something meaningful on your own terms, regardless of who understands its value along the way. 3 weeks into the acquisition, I find myself working late in my office at Sentinel's headquarters. The Boston skyline glitters against the night sky as I review the latest implementation reports. Our technical teams have successfully integrated my security protocol into Sentinel's flagship products, and early client feedback is overwhelmingly positive. First National Bank, Sentinel's largest client, has already committed to expanding their contract based on the enhanced protection measures. A soft knock interrupts my concentration. To my surprise, it's Alan, Sentinel's lead developer, still in the office despite the late hour. "Sorry to bother you," he says, hovering in the doorway with a tablet in hand. "But I thought you'd want to see this right away." He places the tablet in front of me, displaying a real-time security dashboard. "Your protocol just caught and neutralized an attack on Merchant Trust's payment processing system. The adaptive response identified the threat pattern before any data was compromised." I scan the metrics, noting the millisecond response time and threat containment statistics. The system worked exactly as designed, I confirm, unable to keep the satisfaction from my voice. "Better than designed," Alan corrects, pointing to a section of the report. It identified a variant of the attack vector we hadn't explicitly programmed for. The adaptive learning component made the connection independently. For the next half hour, we analyzed the threat response data, professional excitement overriding the late hour. Alan's initial skepticism about my protocol has transformed into genuine respect. Our technical discussions now characterized by collaborative problem-solving rather than territorial defensiveness. "You know," he says as we conclude our analysis, "I've been with Sentinel for 12 years. Under Eleanor, we proposed security upgrades similar to your protocol, but they were always deemed too expensive, too disruptive to implement. Eleanor built a solid company, I acknowledge, but she became risk-averse in the later years. Sometimes innovation requires disruption." Alan nods thoughtfully. The team is impressed with how quickly you've moved from acquisition to implementation. Most new owners would take months just to understand the existing systems. I had a thorough understanding of Sentinel before making the offer, I explain. The acquisition wasn't impulsive. It was the culmination of extensive research and strategic planning. He smiles slightly. Unlike the popular narrative that's circulating. What narrative? I ask, suddenly alert. Alan looks uncomfortable. You haven't heard? There's a story going around that you bought Sentinel specifically to become your brother's boss. Some kind of family revenge drama. I set down my tablet, irritation rising. That's absurd. This was a business decision based on technological synergy and market opportunity. Of course, Alan agrees quickly. Anyone who's worked with you knows that. But you know how people love dramatic narratives, especially when family is involved. After he leaves, I sit in my dimly lit office staring at the harbor lights. The story doesn't surprise me. Boston's tech community is small and prone to gossip. What concerns me is how such narratives might undermine my leadership at a critical integration phase. My phone buzzes with a text from Richard. Dinner tomorrow? Need to discuss PR strategy. I respond with a quick confirmation, then gather my things to head home. As I pass through the now quiet office, I notice light still spilling from Mark's door. He sits hunched over his computer, spreadsheets displayed on dual monitors, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. I pause in his doorway. Working late? He glances up, startled. Julia. Yes, finalizing the consolidated financial forecasts for the board presentation. How's it looking? Better than expected, he admits, gesturing to the screens. The protocol implementation for First National triggered upgrade requests from 3 other major financial clients. Q4 revenue projections are up 22% from pre-acquisition estimates. I enter his office, scanning the impressive financial models he's developed. Have you heard the rumors? I ask, deciding direct confrontation is better than pretense. Mark's expression tightens almost imperceptibly. About you buying Sentinel to exact some kind of revenge? Yes, it's made the rounds. And I've told anyone who asked that it's nonsense, he says firmly. This acquisition makes perfect business sense. Anyone who understands both companies can see that. His response surprises me, not just the content, but the conviction behind it. For the first time, Mark is publicly defending my business decisions rather than undermining them. Thank you, I say simply. That matters. He shrugs, looking slightly uncomfortable with my gratitude. It's just the truth. Your security protocol combined with Sentinel's market position creates a competitive advantage neither company could achieve alone. He hesitates, then adds, You were right all along, about the potential of your technology, about the direction security needs were heading. Coming from Mark, this acknowledgement feels momentous, a validation 15 years in the making. Not that I need it anymore, but hearing it eases something I didn't realize was still tender. We were both right in different ways, I concede. Your financial expertise has been invaluable during this transition. The board was impressed with your risk assessment models. We work for another hour, reviewing the financial presentation together, finding an unexpected rhythm in our complementary expertise. It's not forgiveness exactly, nor full reconciliation, but perhaps the beginning of a professional respect that might, in time, heal some of the personal wounds. The next evening, I meet Richard at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor. At 62, he remains vibrant and sharp, his tailored suit and easy confidence speaking to decades of success in venture capital. The acquisition is exceeding expectations, he says once we've ordered, raising his glass in a small toast. First National's expanded contract alone justifies the purchase price. The technical integration has gone smoothly, I confirm. Alan's team has fully embraced the protocol, and we've already demonstrated its effectiveness in neutralizing potential breaches. Richard nods approvingly. And yet, the business press seems more interested in the family drama than the technological innovation. So you've heard the rumors too. 3 journalists have called me this week, fishing for details about the sibling rivalry angle, he confirms. I deflected, of course, but the narrative is gaining traction. I sigh, setting down my fork. It's frustrating. This acquisition was a strategic business decision, not some elaborate revenge plot. Of course it was, Richard agrees. But you have to admit, the personal angle makes for a more compelling story. Underestimated sister becomes brother's boss? That's the kind of narrative people remember. It's reductive, I protest. 15 years of hard work, innovation, and strategic growth reduced to a family soap opera. Richard studies me thoughtfully. You know, Julia, sometimes the personal story can serve the professional one. People connect with narratives about overcoming obstacles, defying expectations. It humanizes the technology, makes the innovation more accessible. You're suggesting I lean into the vindicated sister angle? I ask incredulously. I'm suggesting you acknowledge it rather than just dismissing it, he clarifies. Not as revenge, but as a testament to persistence and vision. You pursued your technological ideas when no one in your family believed in them. Now that vision has created something valuable enough to acquire the company your brother worked for. That's not just family drama. It's an entrepreneurial success story. Our conversation shifts to specific PR strategies, but Richard's perspective stays with me. Perhaps there is a way to acknowledge the personal journey without compromising. The professional achievement. To own my narrative rather than having it defined by gossip and speculation. The opportunity comes sooner than expected. The following week, Boston Business Journal requests an interview about the acquisition and its impact on the cybersecurity landscape. The journalist, Catherine Wong, has a reputation for thorough research and thoughtful analysis. We meet in my office, where Catherine begins with standard questions about integration timelines and market strategy. I provide detailed responses, emphasizing the technological synergies and expanded client opportunities. Then she shifts direction. Ms. Parker, there's considerable interest in the personal aspect of this acquisition. Your brother Mark has been a senior executive at Sentinel for years. Was that factor in your decision to acquire this specific company? I consider my response carefully, remembering Richard's advice. The acquisition decision was based on business fundamentals, technological, compatibility, market position, client portfolio. That said, I won't pretend there isn't a personal dimension to this story. Catherine leans forward, sensing the interview's turning point. Could you elaborate? For 15 years, I've been developing security protocols that I believed could revolutionize how financial institutions protect sensitive data. During that time, my family, including my brother Mark, viewed my technological pursuits as impractical dreams rather than viable business innovations. I pause, choosing my next words deliberately. The fact that my security protocol has now proven valuable enough to acquire Sentinel isn't about vindication or role reversal. It's about the power of believing in your vision even when conventional wisdom or family dinner conversation suggests you're being unrealistic. And working with your brother now? How has that adjustment been? Professional, I reply honestly. Mark is an excellent finance director with deep institutional knowledge of Sentinel. Our different perspectives and expertise complement each other in ways that benefit the merged company. Catherine studies me thoughtfully. So this isn't the revenge story some are painting it as. Innovation isn't about revenge, I counter. It's about creating something valuable that others don't yet see. My brother didn't believe in my security protocol because it didn't fit his understanding of how technology develops. Now he's seeing its value firsthand as we implement it across Sentinel's client base. That's not revenge. That's the natural progression of disruptive innovation becoming mainstream. After the interview, I feel a strange lightness, As if owning my narrative has lifted a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. For years, I'd compartmentalized my personal and professional lives, never discussing my family's dismissal with colleagues or my technological breakthroughs with family. Now those worlds have collided, requiring a new integration as complex as merging two companies. The Boston Business Journal article appears the following week, featuring a profile that balances technological analysis with personal journey. Rather than sensationalizing the sibling dynamic, Catherine frames it as an entrepreneurial persistence story. The determined innovator whose vision eventually created such value that it transformed industry relationships and family perceptions alike. The morning the article publishes, my mother calls. "I've just finished reading about you in the Business Journal," she says, her voice containing an unfamiliar note of respect. "You explained everything so clearly, Julia. Even I could understand the importance of your security protocol." "That was the goal," I reply, surprised by her reaction. "To make the technology accessible to non-technical readers. You were also very generous," she continues, "about the family's lack of understanding, more generous than we deserved." This acknowledgement catches me off guard. My mother has never directly addressed how the family dismissed my technological pursuits for years. Her recognition now, however belated, touches something I thought I'd moved beyond. "It wasn't about assigning blame," I explain, "just acknowledging that innovation often looks impractical until it succeeds." "Well, your father and I are very proud," she says firmly. "We've ordered 5 copies of the magazine to share with everyone." After we hang up, I sit at my desk contemplating how dramatically perceptions can shift. For 15 years, my family viewed my work with confusion or dismissal. Now they're proudly distributing articles about it to friends and neighbors. What's changed isn't my work or its value, only its external validation through acquisition and press coverage. The security protocol was just as innovative last year when they still called me the dreamer, but now that others recognize its worth, they can finally see it too. There's a lesson in this realization, something about the nature of validation and perception that feels important to capture. I open a new document and begin typing, organizing thoughts that have been percolating since the acquisition. Without fully intending it, I find myself outlining a potential book, part memoir, part business philosophy, about innovation, persistence, and the courage to pursue ideas others dismiss as impractical. I'm still writing when Natalie appears, with my afternoon schedule. She glances at my screen with interest. "New project?" "Just organizing some thoughts," I reply, closing the document. "What's next?" The client presentation for Meridian Bank is in 30 minutes, and Mark sent over the updated financial projections for the board. They're even stronger than last week's estimates. The rest of the day passes in a blur of meetings and implementation discussions. The merged company is finding its rhythm, with integration challenges giving way to emerging opportunities. Client response to the enhanced security offerings has been enthusiastic, with 3 major financial institutions accelerating their upgrade timelines based on the protocol's demonstrated effectiveness. That evening, as I'm preparing to leave, Mark appears in my doorway. "Got a minute?" I gesture him in, noting the folder in his hand. "More financial updates?" "Not exactly." He places the folder on my desk, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I found these while cleaning out. Some old storage boxes at my house. Thought you might want them." Inside are newspaper clippings, printouts, and photographs, a chronicle of Parker Digital's growth over the years. A small write-up in MIT's technology review about promising student innovations. A brief mention in a local business journal about emerging cybersecurity startups. A photograph from a regional tech conference where I presented an early version of my protocol. "You kept these?" I ask, genuinely surprised. Mark had never shown any interest in my company's development, at least not to my knowledge. He shrugs, looking slightly embarrassed. "I tracked your progress. Didn't understand most of the technical details, but I followed along. While telling everyone I was chasing impractical dreams, I point out, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Mark winces. I was wrong about that, but in my defense, most new technologies fail, especially in cybersecurity. The fact that yours succeeded. He pauses, seeming to choose his words carefully. It's exceptional, Julia. Truly exceptional. The compliment feels genuine, free from the condescension that characterized his previous assessments of my work. For the first time, he's seeing me not just as his little sister with unrealistic dreams, but as an innovator who persisted when conventional wisdom, including his, suggested failure was inevitable. Thank you for these, I say, closing the folder, and for being professional during this transition. It would have been easy to make this situation uncomfortable for everyone. Sentinel is my career, he replies simply. Its success matters. To me, regardless of who's in charge. He hesitates, then adds, besides, your protocol is exactly what we needed. The technical team has been trying to develop similar capabilities for years without success. His acknowledgement of the protocol's value feels like closure on 15 years of dismissal. Not an explicit apology, but a professional recognition that means more coming from Mark than it would from almost anyone else. After he leaves, I reopen the folder, examining the artifacts of Parker Digital's journey. Each represents a milestone that passed without family acknowledgement or celebration. Moments when I pushed forward alone, believing in my vision when no one in my immediate circle could see its potential. Richard understood. My technical team believed. Clients eventually recognized the value. But the absence of family support left a void that I've pretended didn't matter, channeling that hurt into determination and work ethic instead. Now, with Sentinel's acquisition and the public recognition it's brought, that void is being filled with belated recognition and support. My parents proudly share articles about my work. Mark acknowledges the protocol's technical superiority. The family narrative has been rewritten to accommodate my success rather than dismiss it. But something in me resists this easy revision of history. The years of dismissal happened. The nickname, the jokes, the suggestions that I get a real job. Those were real, with real impact on my journey. Accepting their newfound pride without acknowledging that history feels like participating in a convenient fiction where they always believed in me, just in ways I couldn't recognize. The next morning, I arrive at the office earlier than usual, my mind still processing these complex emotions. To my surprise, I find my father waiting in the reception area, looking decidedly out of place among Sentinel's sleek corporate decor. "Dad," I say, genuinely startled. "What are you doing here?" Robert Parker stands, straightening his sport coat nervously. At 68, he remains tall and imposing, the high school principal's authority still evident in his posture. "I hope it's all right to stop by. Your mother mentioned you have early meetings, so I thought..." "It's fine," I assure him, leading him to my office. "Just unexpected." Once we're seated, he looks around at the harbor view, the awards on the wall, the evidence of a success he never anticipated. "Quite a place you've built for yourself," he says finally. "It's been a journey," I acknowledge, still confused by his unprecedented visit. "Is everything okay, Dad?" He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a folded piece of paper, weathered with age. "I found this while going through some old files. It's from your senior year of high school." I unfold the paper to find a college application essay I'd written for MIT, outlining my interest in cybersecurity and data protection. I'd forgotten about this document, written when my technological aspirations were just beginning to take shape. "You wrote about wanting to build adaptive security systems that could protect financial information," my father says, pointing to a paragraph. "About how existing systems were too static to respond to evolving threats." I scan the teenage handwriting, struck by how clearly my current work had been prefigured in that early vision. I'd forgotten about this essay. So had I, he admits. Until your mother and I read that article yesterday. You've been consistent in your vision all along, Julia. We just couldn't see it. My father has never been emotionally demonstrative. His approval typically came in the form of brief nods or practical advice, particularly for Mark, whose achievements fit neatly into his understanding of success. For him to make this acknowledgement, to explicitly recognize that the problem was their perception, not my vision, feels monumental. Why did you keep this? I ask, genuinely curious. He looks slightly embarrassed. I kept all your college application materials. Yours and Mark's both. I just understood his better. Business, finance, those were fields with clear paths, metrics I recognized. And computer security wasn't, I finish for him. No, he agrees. It seemed abstract, theoretical. I couldn't visualize what success would look like in that field. He gestures around my office. Now I can. We sit in silence for a moment. 15 years of misunderstanding stretched between us. Finally, my father speaks again, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I owe you an apology, Julia. Not just for failing to believe in your vision, but for making you feel it wasn't valid because I couldn't understand it. The acknowledgement touches something deep inside me, the part that still remembers the sting of being dismissed, of watching Mark receive enthusiastic support while my updates were met with confused tolerance at best. I didn't need you to understand the technology, I say softly, just to believe I might know what I was doing, even if it didn't look like Mark's path. He nods, accepting the gentle rebuke. Your brother followed a road I recognized. You built a new one entirely. He meets my eyes directly. That took more courage than I appreciated at the time. As our conversation draws to a close, my father asks for a tour of the office, a request that would have seemed inconceivable a month ago. I show him the development floor where Alan's team is implementing the security protocol across Sentinel's products, explaining in simplified terms how the technology works. To my surprise, he asks thoughtful questions, genuinely trying to grasp the concepts that once seemed so foreign to him. When we pass Mark's office, I introduce them briefly, watching with interest as my father observes this new professional dynamic between his children. Your sister's security protocol is remarkable, Mark tells him, maintaining the professional tone we've established. The client response has exceeded all projections. My father nods, a complex mixture of pride and adjustment in his expression as he processes his children's reversed roles. Julia was always ahead of her time, he says, surprising both of us with this belated recognition. We just didn't have the right metrics to measure it. After he leaves, I return to my office contemplating this unexpected evolution in family dynamics. For 15 years, I'd been the disappointment, the dreamer, the one whose path was deemed impractical compared to Mark's traditional success. Now that narrative has been upended, forcing everyone, including me, to recalibrate our understanding of each other. Later that afternoon, during a break between meetings, I reopened the document I'd started the previous day, the outline for a potential book about innovation and persistence. With renewed clarity, I begin drafting a chapter about validation, how we seek it, how its absence shapes us, and how true innovation often requires proceeding without it. The acquisition has brought external validation in abundance: financial success, industry recognition, press coverage. But the deeper validation comes from within, from knowing that I saw possibilities others couldn't yet perceive and persisted until those possibilities became reality. As I write, I realize I'm not just documenting my journey, but potentially creating a roadmap for others, particularly women in tech, who find their ideas dismissed or underestimated. The working title emerges naturally: The Practical Dreamer: How Dismissed Ideas Become Disruptive Innovations. My phone buzzes with a text from Richard. Saw the business journal piece. Perfect balance of personal and professional. Time to consider a broader platform for your story? I smile at the synchronicity, replying, already working on it. Book outline in progress. His response comes quickly. Knew you would be. Dinner next week to discuss? My publishing contacts are already interested. As I return to my writing, I reflect on how dramatically my world has expanded in the month since acquiring Sentinel. Not just professionally, though the merged company's potential exceeds even my optimistic projections, but personally as well. The family that once dismissed my technological pursuits now struggles to reconcile their narrative with my evident success. The brother who coined my nickname now acknowledges the value of my innovation. The parents who couldn't understand my path now make efforts to learn about what I've built. These shifts don't erase 15 years of dismissal, nor do they eliminate the complex emotions those years engendered. But they open possibilities for new relationships based on mutual respect, rather than hierarchical judgment. Relationships where Mark and I can collaborate professionally despite our complicated history, where my parents can take pride in my achievements, even if they still don't fully understand the technology. The story isn't about revenge or role reversal, as the gossips initially suggested. It's about persistence and vision, about seeing possibilities others dismiss and creating value that eventually becomes undeniable. As I close my laptop and prepare for my next meeting, I realize this is just the beginning of an ongoing integration, not just of two companies, but of my personal and professional identities, of past dismissal and present recognition, of individual achievement and collaborative potential. The journey continues, but with a new awareness that success isn't measured by proving skeptics wrong, but by creating something so aligned with your authentic vision that external validation becomes merely confirmation of what you already knew. 2 months after the acquisition, Sentinel Systems, now officially rebranded as Parker Sentinel Security, hosts a reception for clients and industry partners to showcase our integrated security offerings. The event, held in the waterfront building's top-floor conference center, represents the public culmination of our merger. I stand near the entrance, greeting guests alongside Richard and Eleanor, who has returned for the occasion despite her official departure from the company. The room fills with financial executives, technical directors, and industry analysts, all curious about the merged company's enhanced capabilities. Quite a turnout, Eleanor observes, surveying the crowd with a practiced eye. First Nationals. Entire executive team is here, along with representatives from at least 15 other financial institutions. The protocol demonstration has generated significant interest, I confirm, especially after the Merchant Trust incident proved its effectiveness in real-time threat response. Eleanor nods approvingly. You've moved quickly and decisively. The integration has been more successful than I anticipated. Coming from Sentinel's founder, this assessment feels particularly validating. Eleanor built the company from nothing, establishing it as a respected security provider before technological limitations began hampering its growth. Your infrastructure provided the perfect foundation, I acknowledge. The company you built had everything except the next-generation security architecture. Together, we're stronger than either company could be alone. As guests continue to arrive, I notice my parents entering hesitantly, looking somewhat overwhelmed by the corporate setting. I'd invited them partially as a courtesy, never expecting they would actually attend an industry event in Boston on a weeknight. Julia, my mother calls, making her way through the crowd. Helen Parker looks elegant if slightly out of place in a conservative blue dress, my father equally formal in his best suit. The traffic was terrible, but we didn't want to miss your big night. Their presence surprises me, not just their attendance, but their evident pride as they look around the impressive space. For so many years, my professional achievements were met with polite confusion or thinly veiled concern. Now they've driven an hour on a weeknight to attend a technical presentation they likely won't fully understand. I'm glad you could make it, I say sincerely, introducing them to Eleanor and several key clients who happen to be nearby. To my further surprise, my father engages these executives with genuine interest, explaining that he's Julia's father, just trying to understand what my daughter has built. There's no dismissal in his tone, no suggestion that my work is impractical or difficult to comprehend, just open curiosity and unmistakable pride. As the formal presentation begins, I take the stage alongside Alan and Mark to demonstrate the integrated security platform. Alan handles the technical explanation, walking the audience through how the adaptive protocol identifies and neutralizes emerging threats. Mark presents the financial implications, the reduced breach costs, compliance advantages, and competitive differentiation our clients can expect. I conclude by addressing the broader vision. Financial security isn't static. It's an ongoing dialogue between protection measures and evolving threats. Parker Sentinel's approach isn't just about building stronger walls. It's about creating intelligent systems that adapt and respond to attacks in real time, learning from each encounter to strengthen future protections. The demonstration that follows shows the protocol in action, neutralizing a simulated attack on a banking system while adapting its defenses to prevent similar future breaches. The audience's response is immediately positive, with technical directors nodding in appreciation of the protocol's elegance and executives recognizing its business implications. After the formal presentation, the reception transitions to networking, with team members stationed throughout the room to answer specific questions. I circulate among guests, discussing implementation timelines and technical specifications with interested clients. At one point, I notice my parents speaking with Richard, who appears to be explaining something with his characteristic enthusiasm. Curious, I make my way toward them. "Julia," Richard calls as I approach. "I was just telling your parents about the book proposal. 3 publishers have already expressed interest based on the outline alone." My mother looks both surprised and pleased. "A book? You didn't mention you were writing a book, Julia." "It's still in the early stages," I explain. "A combination of technological analysis and personal journey, how innovation often requires persisting when conventional wisdom suggests you're being impractical. Like pursuing computer security when everyone told you to get a teaching certificate." My father observes with a self-awareness that would have been unimaginable a few months ago. "Something like that," I agree, sharing a small smile with Richard, who has been encouraging this project from its inception. As the evening progresses, I find myself in conversation with the CEO of First National Bank, discussing potential expansion of their security services, when Mark approaches with a client in tow. "Julia, have you met Thomas Chen from Meridian?" "Trust?" he asks, smoothly facilitating the introduction. "He's interested in the protocol's application for international wire transfers, which I thought you could address better than I could." The professional courtesy in Mark's manner, introducing a potential client, acknowledging the limits of his expertise, deferring to mine, represents a dramatic evolution from the brother who once dismissed my technological pursuits as impractical. Dreams. After addressing the client's questions, I find a moment alone with Mark near the bar. "That was a solid presentation," I tell him. "Your financial analysis made the business case clear even for the non-technical executives." He accepts the compliment with a nod. "Your protocol makes it easy. The numbers speak for themselves when security breaches are reduced by 64%. We stand in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the successful event unfold around us. The culmination of 2 months of intensive integration work that has transformed both companies. "Did you ever imagine this?" Mark asks suddenly. "Back when you were starting Parker Digital from that tiny apartment, did you picture eventually running a company this size?" I consider the question seriously. "The technology vision was always clear," I reply. I knew the security protocol could transform how financial institutions protect data. But the scale of it, the merging of companies. I gesture around the room. No, I couldn't have predicted this specific outcome. Yet you persisted, he observes. Even when everyone, including me, told you it was impractical. I believed in the technology, I say simply, even when I couldn't yet prove its value to others. Mark studies me with new respect, his perception finally aligning with reality rather than the dismissive narrative he maintained for so many years. That's the chapter I want to read in your book, he says. How you maintained that belief when no external evidence supported it. Because that's what I never understood. Continuing to pursue something when all conventional metrics suggested failure. His acknowledgement feels like the closing of a circle. The brother who coined my dismissive nickname now genuinely curious about the persistence he once mocked. Not because external success has validated it, but because he recognizes it represents a kind of courage he hadn't previously valued. As the evening winds down and guests begin to depart, I find myself standing with my parents near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. The city lights shimmer on the dark water, boats moving silently through the night. I wish your grandfather could have seen this, my father says unexpectedly. He was an innovator too, in his own way. Started a manufacturing business everyone said would fail because his methods were unconventional. This is new information. My father has rarely spoken of his own father's entrepreneurial efforts. I didn't know that, I say, genuinely surprised. He died before you were born, my father explains. But watching you tonight, explaining technology that's changing how banks protect information, I couldn't help thinking how proud he would have been. He understood what it means to see possibilities others don't. My mother touches my arm gently. We should have seen it too, Julia. All those years we thought you were being impractical, when you were actually being visionary. I'm sorry it took this. She gestures around the impressive space. For us to understand that their belated recognition brings mixed emotions. Appreciation for their current support, sadness for all the years without it. A complex reconciliation of past and present that defies simple categorization. What matters is that we're here, now, I say finally, choosing to focus on possibility rather than recrimination, and that you're making the effort to understand what I've built, even if the technology itself remains somewhat mysterious. As they prepare to leave, my father embraces me with unusual emotion. You've created something remarkable, Julia. Not just the technology or the company, but your own path. One we couldn't envision because it didn't exist until you created it. After they depart, I return to the now quiet reception area where Richard and Eleanor remain, discussing the event's success over final drinks. Your family seemed impressed, Eleanor observes with her characteristic directness. Quite a shift from the dismissive brother and confused parents you described during our acquisition talks. I smile slightly at her frankness. Success has a way of clarifying vision, both mine and theirs. And yet, Richard notes perceptively, external validation isn't what drove you all these years. No, I agree. It was always about the technology, creating security systems that could truly protect sensitive information through adaptive response rather than static defenses. Which is why you'll continue to innovate, Eleanor predicts, even now that you've achieved the kind of success your family can recognize, because it was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving something else entirely possible. I complete the thought, the phrase crystallizing my journey in a way I hadn't previously articulated. As I leave the building later that night, Boston's skyline glittering against the dark sky, I reflect on how dramatically my life has transformed in just 2 months. The acquisition has brought professional integration, market expansion, and industry recognition. But more significantly, it has catalyzed a personal integration, a reconciliation of the dreamer I was labeled and the innovator I've become. The family that once dismissed my technological pursuits now struggles to understand and appreciate them. The brother who coined my nickname now acknowledges the value of my innovation. The parents who couldn't comprehend my path now take pride in its destination, even if the journey remains somewhat mysterious to them. These shifts don't erase 15 years of dismissal, nor do they eliminate the complex emotions those years engendered. But they open possibilities for new relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical judgment, relationships where past misunderstandings can give way to future connections. As I drive home through the quiet streets, I find myself looking forward rather than back, to the book that will capture this journey, to the next generation of security protocols already taking shape in my mind, to relationships that might evolve beyond their historical limitations. The acquisition that began as a business strategy has become something more profound, a catalyst for integration across all dimensions of my life, an opportunity to create not just technological innovation, but human connection based on authentic recognition rather than predetermined narratives. And in that integration lies the true measure of success, not in proving skeptics wrong or roles reversed, but in creating something so aligned with my authentic vision that external validation becomes merely confirmation of what I already knew. That dreams dismissed as impractical can become innovations that change how we protect what matters most, whether digital assets or human relationships. The journey continues, but with a new awareness that success isn't defined by others' recognition, but by the integrity of pursuing possibilities only you can see, until you transform them into realities everyone can experience. 1 year after acquiring Sentinel Systems, I stand at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel, accepting the New England Technology Council's Innovator of the Year award. The audience, a who's who of the region's tech leadership, applauds as I take my place at the microphone. Innovation isn't about sudden inspiration, I begin, looking out at the sea of faces. It's about persistent vision, seeing possibilities that others dismiss as impractical and pursuing them anyway, not to prove critics wrong, but because you understand their value even when others can't yet see it. From my vantage point, I can see Richard Torres at the Parker Sentinel table, nodding in approval. Beside him sits Mark, immaculate in a tailored suit, his expression thoughtful. My parents occupy the seats to his right, my mother elegant in midnight blue. My father, watching with undisguised pride that still feels new and somewhat surreal. The security protocol being recognized tonight wasn't created in isolation, I continue. It represents years of development, refinement, and persistence. It exists because a team of brilliant engineers believed in possibilities beyond conventional security architecture. And it's making an impact because Parker Sentinel united technological innovation with market reach in a combination stronger than either company could achieve alone. As I acknowledge key team members and outline our security protocol's impact on financial data protection, I'm struck by how dramatically my professional landscape has transformed. Parker Sentinel now employs over 200 people across 3 offices. Our client list includes 8 of the 10 largest financial institutions in North America, and our security protocol has prevented an estimated $86 million in potential breach losses for our clients. The personal landscape has shifted just as profoundly. The family that once dismissed my technological pursuits as impractical dreams now celebrates my innovation. The brother who coined my nickname now serves as Parker Sentinel's CFO, his financial expertise complementing my technological vision in ways neither of us could have anticipated. After the ceremony concludes and congratulations are exchanged, I find myself standing with Richard near the hotel's harbor view windows, watching boats move across the dark water. From tiny apartment startup to Innovator of the Year, he reflects, raising his glass in a small toast. Quite a journey. With considerable help along the way, I acknowledge, returning the gesture. Richard's early investment and ongoing guidance have been instrumental in Parker Digital's growth and Sentinel's successful acquisition. I provided capital and connections, he corrects. You provided the vision and persistence that made everything else possible. Before I can respond, my father joins us, extending his hand to Richard. At 69, Robert Parker stands straight and dignified, his retirement seemingly energizing rather than diminishing him. "Mr. Torres," he says warmly, "we're indebted to you for recognizing Julia's potential when we couldn't see it." Richard accepts the handshake with a diplomatic smile. "Julia's talent would have emerged regardless. I was simply fortunate to connect with it at the right moment." My father nods, turning to me with an expression I'm still getting accustomed to, one of genuine respect rather than concerned confusion. "Your speech was excellent, Julia, particularly the parts about persistent vision. It made me think about all the times we mistook your persistence for impracticality." This acknowledgement, direct, unqualified, in the presence of my most significant professional supporter, represents how far we've come in rebuilding our relationship over the past year. Not erasing 15 years of dismissal, but creating something new that acknowledges, rather than denies, that history. Different perspectives, I say simply. You valued certainty and defined pathways. I saw possibilities in emerging technologies that didn't yet have established trajectories. My father smiles slightly, a diplomatic way of saying we didn't understand what you were building. "Few people did," Richard interjects graciously. "That's what makes Julia's achievement remarkable. True innovation often looks impractical until it becomes essential." As the evening winds down and guests begin to depart, I find Mark standing alone by the bar, contemplating his drink with unusual intensity. "Congratulations, CFO," I say, joining him. 6 months ago, I'd promoted Mark from finance director to chief financial officer, acknowledging his exceptional work during the acquisition integration and company rebranding. He looks up, his expression difficult to read. "Congratulations yourself, Innovator of the Year." "You seem pensive," I observe. "Everything okay?" Mark hesitates, then gestures toward a quieter corner of the now emptying ballroom. "Once we're relatively private," he speaks with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "Watching you accept that award tonight, hearing all those industry leaders praising your innovative vision." He pauses, collecting his thoughts. "I keep thinking about all the Sunday dinners where I dismissed what you were building. All the times I called you the dreamer, like it was something to be ashamed of." His acknowledgement catches me off guard. Though our professional relationship has evolved significantly over the past year, we've rarely discussed the dismissive nickname or its impact directly. "That was a long time ago," I say, unsure how to navigate this unexpected territory. "Not that long," he counters, "and not something easily forgotten. I was the one who started it, you know. Mom and Dad were concerned about your choices, but I'm the one who turned concern into mockery. The admission hangs between us, heavy with implications neither of us has fully addressed until now." "Why bring this up tonight?" I ask finally. Mark sets down his drink, meeting my eyes directly. "Because I need to say, clearly and explicitly, that I was wrong. Not just about your technology or business potential, but about you, about your vision and determination, about what constitutes practical versus impractical pursuits. The apology I never sought or expected lands with surprising impact. After a year of professional collaboration, of rebuilding some semblance, of sibling relationship through shared company goals, this direct acknowledgement of past harm feels like a missing piece finally sliding into place. I appreciate that, I say simply, knowing that elaborate forgiveness would feel forced for both of us. Some wounds heal through actions over time rather than single conversations, and our professional partnership has already begun that process. Mark nods, seemingly relieved to have said his piece. "You've built something remarkable, Julia." Not just the security protocol or the company, but a different way of approaching innovation itself. I'm still learning from it. He smiles slightly. From you. Before I can respond, Natalie approaches, with my coat and a reminder about tomorrow's early meeting with international clients. The moment between Mark and I shifts back to professional territory. Comfortable, familiar, the foundation we've rebuilt our relationship upon. Later that night, as my car navigates the quiet streets toward home, I reflect on how profoundly my world has transformed since acquiring Sentinel. The professional achievements, market expansion, technological integration, industry recognition were anticipated, planned for, executed with strategic precision. The personal transformations have been more surprising. My parents' belated but genuine interest in understanding what I've built. Mark's evolution from dismissive brother to respected colleague. My own journey from seeking validation to recognizing I never actually needed it. Most unexpected has been the book's impact. The Practical Dreamer. How Dismissed Ideas Become. Disruptive innovations published 4 months ago to critical acclaim and surprisingly strong sales. Part memoir, part business philosophy. The book chronicles my journey from MIT student with a security protocol concept to CEO of a leading cybersecurity firm, extracting lessons about innovation, persistence, and the courage to pursue visions others dismiss as impractical. The book has resonated particularly with women in technology, many of whom have reached out with their own stories of having transformative ideas dismissed or underestimated. In response, I've established the Practical Dreamer Foundation, providing grants and mentorship to women developing innovative security technologies. As I unlock the door to my Beacon Hill townhouse, a recent purchase that still feels like an indulgence after so many years of reinvesting every dollar into Parker Digital, I'm greeted by soft lighting and classical music. David, an architectural historian I've been dating for 6 months, looks up from his book with a warm smile. "Congratulations, Innovator of the Year," he says, rising to embrace me. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there tonight." Academic conferences. "Wait for no one," I reply easily, appreciating his straightforward attitude toward our respective demanding careers. After years of relationships complicated by power dynamics or threatened male egos, David's secure confidence in his own professional identity has been refreshingly uncomplicated. "How was the ceremony?" he asks, pouring me a glass of wine as I slip off my heels. "Validating," I admit, settling beside him on the sofa. Not just the award, but seeing my team recognized for their contributions. The protocol exists because of collective talent, not individual brilliance. Says the woman being profiled. "In next month's Forbes," he teases gently, referring to the upcoming cover story on women transforming the cybersecurity landscape. "But I understand what you mean. Recognition feels different when it's about the work itself rather than personal. Vindication." His perceptiveness reminds me why our relationship has developed so naturally despite our different fields. David intuitively understands aspects of my journey that I've struggled to articulate even to myself. The complex interplay between external validation and internal certainty, between proving worth and simply creating value. Mark apologized. "Tonight," I tell him, still processing the unexpected conversation. "For the nickname, for all the years of dismissal. It caught me off guard." David considers this thoughtfully. "That's significant. Not just acknowledging he was wrong about your business potential, but about how he treated you personally." "It feels like closure of sorts," I agree, though some dynamics are too deeply ingrained to completely transform. "Families are complex ecosystems," David observes. "Changing one element, like your professional status, inevitably affects all the others, but not always in predictable ways." As we talk into the night, discussing the ceremony, his conference, and plans for the weekend, I'm struck by how this relationship represents another form of integration. personal fulfillment aligning with professional achievement in a balance that once seemed elusive. The following morning, I arrive at Parker Sentinel's headquarters to find Natalie already preparing materials for our international client meeting. At 29, she's evolved from efficient assistant to invaluable chief of staff, overseeing key initiatives and representing me in my absence. The Tokyo team is connected and waiting in the video conference room, she informs me, handing over a tablet with the latest implementation metrics. And Richard called. The MIT Innovation Center wants to confirm your keynote for next month's symposium. Tell Richard I'll call him this afternoon, I reply, scanning the metrics as we walk toward the conference room. And let's schedule time tomorrow to discuss your expanded role in the European expansion. I want you taking point on the London office setup. Natalie's surprised smile confirms I've made the right decision. Her talent deserves recognition and advancement, particularly as Parker Sentinel continues its rapid growth. The morning unfolds in a series of productive meetings, the Tokyo implementation proceeding ahead of schedule, the London office plans taking concrete shape, the research team presenting promising developments for the next generation of our security protocol. By late afternoon, I'm reviewing architectural plans for our expanded Boston headquarters when Mark appears in my doorway, tablet in hand. Got a minute? The Q3 forecasts are ready for your review, and there's something interesting in the client acquisition patterns. We spend the next hour analyzing financial projections and market trends, our working rhythm now comfortable and efficient. Mark's financial acumen perfectly complements my technological focus, our different perspectives strengthening rather than undermining each other. As we conclude, Mark hesitates, then asks, "Have you thought any more about the MIT technology board position?" They've asked twice now. The prestigious board appointment would connect Parker Sentinel with cutting-edge research while providing strategic guidance to MIT's technology development initiatives. I'm still considering it, I reply. The time commitment is significant, and with the European expansion. You should accept, Mark says with uncharacteristic directness. Not just for the company connections, though those would be valuable, but because you'd actually enjoy it. Engaging with emerging technologies, mentoring student innovators, it aligns with what you're building with the foundation. His insight surprises me, not the observation itself, but his attention to what would fulfill me beyond business advantages. This represents another subtle shift in our evolving relationship, from professional collaboration to something approaching genuine care for each other's well-being. I'll give it serious thought, I promise, making a note to review the proposal again. As Mark leaves, I turn my attention to email, finding a message from Catherine Wong, the journalist whose Boston Business Journal profile had so accurately captured the complexities of the acquisition story. Touching base about a potential follow-up. "Peace," she writes. Not focused on the acquisition this time, but on what happened next. How you've transformed both company culture and security technology over the past year. Would you be open to an interview exploring the integration journey and lessons learned? The timing feels right. A year post-acquisition, we have concrete results to discuss. Not just financial metrics, but cultural integration, technological advancement, and market impact. And personally, I've gained enough perspective to articulate the journey's challenges and triumphs with clarity, rather than raw emotion. I respond affirmatively, suggesting dates for the interview, then turn to the speech draft for next month's MIT Symposium. The keynote represents an opportunity to share insights about innovation with the next generation of technologists, students sitting exactly where I once sat, perhaps harboring ideas currently dismissed as impractical that might eventually transform industries. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. "Saw the award announcement in the paper this morning. So proud of you, honey. Your father is telling everyone at his coffee group." The simple message triggers a complex emotional response, appreciation, for their current support, alongside awareness of its belated nature. Our relationship has improved significantly over the past year. with genuine efforts on both sides to bridge the gap created by years of mutual misunderstanding. Sunday dinners, once exercises in emotional endurance, have gradually evolved into more balanced family gatherings. My parents make sincere efforts to understand my work, asking thoughtful questions about security technology and company developments. Mark and I maintain the professional courtesy that has become our new normal, while Tina has proven surprisingly adaptable to the shifted family dynamic. Most significantly, my niece Emma has developed an unexpected interest in computer programming, approaching me shyly at a recent dinner with questions about coding languages and security concepts. The 12-year-old's enthusiasm reminds me of my own early fascination with technology, and I've begun mentoring her on weekend afternoons, sessions that have become highlights for us both. "Your daughter has a natural aptitude for logical problem solving," I told Mark after one such session. "Her pattern recognition abilities are exceptional." He nodded thoughtfully. "She reminds me of you at that age, always figuring out systems, seeing connections others missed." The observation, offered without irony or qualification, represented how far our perspective had evolved. As evening approaches, I leave the office and head to the Practical Dreamer Foundation's monthly mentor gathering at a downtown event space. 20 established women technologists and 20 promising students mingle over light refreshments, sharing experiences and expertise in an environment specifically designed to nurture innovation that might otherwise be dismissed. I circulate among the groups, listening more than speaking, occasionally offering guidance or connections where appropriate. The foundation represents an increasingly important aspect of my work, not just building technology or leading a company, but actively creating pathways for others facing the barriers I encountered. "Your book changed my approach to innovation," one mentor tells me, a cybersecurity expert with 15 years' experience. "Particularly the chapter about distinguishing between practical criticism and dismissal rooted in bias. It helped me recognize which feedback deserved my attention and which I could disregard." That distinction took me years to understand, I admit. I wasted too much energy trying to convince people who fundamentally couldn't see the value of what I was building, rather than finding those who could grasp its potential. As the event winds down, I find myself in conversation with Jessica Chen, a brilliant MIT graduate student developing quantum encryption protocols. Her work pushes boundaries in ways that have attracted both excitement and skepticism from established security experts. "My advisor suggests I focus on more conventional cryptography," she explains, frustration evident in her voice. He says, "Quantum approaches are too theoretical, too far from practical implementation to be worth pursuing at this stage." The situation echoes my own experience so precisely that I can't help smiling in recognition. Let me guess, he acknowledges the theoretical merit, but questions whether the industry is ready for such advanced approaches? "Exactly," she confirms, surprised by my accuracy. "How did you know?" "Because innovation often outpaces acceptance," I explain. "Your quantum protocols might be 5 years ahead of market readiness, but that's precisely why they're valuable. You're solving problems the industry doesn't yet recognize, but will eventually face." Jessica studies me thoughtfully. "How did you know when to persist versus when to pivot? When feedback represented legitimate concerns versus simple resistance to new approaches?" The question, insightful, fundamental to innovative work, deserves careful consideration. "I developed 3 criteria," I tell her. "First, does the criticism address specific technical limitations or merely express discomfort with unfamiliar approaches? Second, does it come from someone who understands both the problem domain and the proposed solution? And third, does it suggest concrete improvements or just general skepticism?" We discuss her quantum protocols in detail, applying these criteria to the feedback she's received. By conversation's end, she has a clearer framework for evaluating which concerns merit attention and which represent the natural resistance innovations typically encounter. The Foundation's grant will help fund your continued research, I assure her. And I'd like to connect you with our quantum computing specialists at Parker Sentinel. Your work complements some exploratory projects we're developing for next generation security architecture. Walking home through Boston's historic streets, I reflect on how these mentoring relationships have become increasingly fulfilling aspects of my professional life. Building Parker Sentinel remains my primary focus, but creating pathways for other innovative thinkers, particularly those likely to face dismissal or underestimation, has emerged as an equally meaningful mission. At home, I find an email from my publisher confirming strong international sales for The Practical Dreamer and inquiring about interest in a second book. The suggestion is tempting. I've been collecting notes on how innovation thrives or withers in different organizational cultures, insights gleaned from Parker Sentinel's integration and client implementations. As I consider potential book concepts, my phone rings with a call from Richard. Just checking that you've made your decision about the MIT board position, he says without preamble. The deadline's tomorrow. I'm still weighing the time commitment, I admit, between running Parker Sentinel, the Foundation activities, and the European expansion. Julia, Richard interrupts gently. This is exactly the kind of opportunity you've earned. Not just because of your technical expertise or business success, but because of your unique perspective on innovation itself. MIT needs voices like yours shaping how they develop and nurture technological talent. His argument resonates with something I've been considering since the mentoring session: how institutional approaches to innovation, often inadvertently, discourage exactly the kind of boundary pushing that creates transformative technologies. You're right, I concede. I'll accept the position, but I'll need to delegate more operational responsibilities to ensure I can fulfill all these commitments effectively. That's what strong leadership teams are for, Richard reminds me. You've built an exceptional one at Parker Sentinel. Trust them to execute while you divide your focus among these strategic priorities. After we hang up, I draft my acceptance email to the MIT Technology Board chair, outlining what I hope to contribute during my tenure. The position represents another unexpected dimension of my professional evolution, from dismissed dreamer to recognized authority, helping shape how institutions foster or hinder technological innovation. The following morning, I meet with my executive team to discuss leadership restructuring that will accommodate my expanded commitments. Natalie's promotion to Chief of Staff is officially announced, along with expanded responsibilities for key directors overseeing international expansion. These changes reflect both organizational needs and individual talents, I explained to the assembled team. Parker Sentinel is growing beyond what any single leader can directly oversee. Our continued success depends on distributed leadership and clear delegation. Mark, sitting at his customary place to my right, nods in agreement. The financial projections support this expansion of leadership capacity. Our growth trajectory requires broader decision-making authority at multiple organizational levels. The meeting transitions to implementation details, reporting structures, authority, parameters, communication protocols. Throughout the discussion, I'm struck by how naturally the team navigates these changes, their confidence reflecting the strong culture we've built since the acquisition. Later that afternoon, Catherine Wong arrives for our follow-up interview. A year after her initial profile of the acquisition, she's curious about the integration journey and lessons learned. The market response has exceeded even your optimistic projections, she observes, reviewing the performance metrics I've shared. What factors contributed most significantly to the successful integration? Clarity of purpose, I reply without hesitation. Everyone understood why Parker Digital and Sentinel Systems belonged together. Technological innovation combined with market reach creating value neither company could achieve alone. And the personal dimension? She probes carefully. Last year, much was made of the family connection, with speculation about revenge motives or sibling rivalry. I smile, appreciating her direct approach. The reality proved far less dramatic. then the speculation. Mark and I established professional boundaries from the beginning, focusing on what each of us contributes to Parker Sentinel's success rather than our complicated history. "He's now your CFO," Catherine notes, glancing at the organizational chart I've provided. "That suggests a successful working relationship." "Mark is an exceptional financial strategist," I confirm. "His expertise complements my technological focus in ways that strengthen the company. Our different perspectives and skill sets have become assets rather than obstacles." The interview continues for nearly 2 hours, covering integration challenges, technological advancements, market expansion, and organizational culture. Throughout, Catherine's questions reveal her genuine interest in understanding how companies successfully navigate post-acquisition transitions, both operationally and culturally. As we conclude, she asks a final question that catches me slightly off guard. "What would you tell your younger self, the MIT student developing that first security protocol, while everyone suggested more conventional paths?" The question requires consideration, not because I lack an answer, but because the answer has evolved significantly over the past year. After a thoughtful pause, I respond. I'd tell her that persistence isn't just about proving others wrong, it's about creating value that eventually becomes undeniable. That the dismissal she encounters isn't personal, but a natural response to innovations that challenge established thinking. And most importantly, that finding the right supporters is more valuable than convincing the skeptics. After Catherine departs, I remain in my office reviewing European expansion plans until early evening. As I prepare to leave, Mark appears in my doorway. "Quick update on the London office lease," he says, handing me a folder. "The terms are favorable, and the location provides excellent access to financial clients." I review the documents, noting his thorough analysis of comparative costs and strategic advantages. "This looks solid. Let's proceed with the final negotiations." Mark nods, then hesitates before adding, "Emma asked if you might be available this weekend for another programming session. She's been working on that security simulation you suggested and wants to show you her progress." "Saturday afternoon would work," I reply, genuinely pleased by my niece's continued interest. Our weekend sessions have become a highlight for both of us, a new kind of family connection built around shared intellectual curiosity, rather than obligatory tradition. "She'll be thrilled," Mark says, his expression softening. "It means a lot to her, you know, having an aunt who takes her interests seriously." The comment carries layers of meaning for both of us. Acknowledgement of what I lacked at Emma's age. Appreciation for the different family dynamic we're creating for the next generation. "Her interests deserve to be taken seriously," I reply, simply. "She has genuine talent and curiosity. Those should be nurtured, not dismissed." Mark nods, understanding the unspoken reference to our own history. "They will be," he assures me. "We're learning from past mistakes." As he leaves, I reflect on this subtle but significant exchange. The family that once uniformly dismissed my technological pursuits now actively supports Emma's similar interests. Mark, who coined my deprecating nickname, now ensures his daughter receives the encouragement and recognition I never got. My parents, who couldn't understand my unconventional path, now proudly tell friends about their Innovator daughter. These shifts don't erase 15 years of dismissal, but they suggest something more valuable: growth, learning, evolution toward something healthier for the next generation. That evening, I meet David for dinner at a small restaurant near the harbor. As we discuss our respective days, I share insights from the MIT board acceptance and leadership restructuring. "You're creating space for strategic work rather than operational management," he observes. "That seems aligned with where your interests and talents naturally lead." It feels right, I agree. Building Parker Sentinel was never just about growing a company, but about advancing security technology itself. These new roles, MIT Board, Foundation Leadership, Industry Advocacy, extend that mission beyond organizational boundaries. David nods thoughtfully. Evolution rather than departure. Your core purpose remains consistent, just expressing through broader channels. His perception, as always, helps clarify my own thinking. Throughout my journey, from dismissed dreamer to recognized innovator, the fundamental mission has remained remarkably consistent, creating adaptive security systems that protect sensitive information in an evolving threat landscape. What's changed isn't the core purpose, but its scope and impact. From theoretical protocol to implemented technology, from tiny startup to industry leader, from individual achievement to mentoring, the next generation of innovators. Later that night, as we walk along the harbor promenade, Boston's skyline reflected in the dark water, David asks about my weekend plans. Saturday afternoon with Emma for programming, I tell him. Then dinner with my parents. They want to discuss the Foundation's scholarship program for women in technology. Your parents are getting involved with the Foundation? He asks, surprised by this development. My mother is organizing a fundraising event through her hospital auxiliary, I explain. My father's using his educator connections to reach promising high school students who might not otherwise consider technology careers. David smiles, understanding the significance of this engagement. So they're not just accepting your success, but actively participating in extending its impact. Exactly, I confirm. It's their way of making amends, I think. Not just acknowledging they were wrong about my path, but helping ensure other young women don't face the same dismissal. As we continue our walk, I reflect on the symmetry of this development. How my parents' initial resistance to my technological pursuits has transformed into active support for others with similar interests. Not erasing the past, but creating something constructive from its lessons. The Foundation's work represents this principle on a larger scale, transforming my personal experience of dismissal into structural support for innovators facing similar barriers. The book extends it further, sharing insights that might help others navigate the complex territory between visionary thinking and practical execution. Even Parker Sentinel itself embodies this transformation, uniting technological innovation with market reach to create security solutions stronger than either company could develop alone. In each case, the pattern is similar, not rejecting or erasing difficult experiences, but integrating them into something more valuable, more complete, more purposeful. As we reach the end of the promenade, the harbor stretching dark and peaceful before us, I realize this integration represents the truest measure of success. Not external validation or professional achievement, though those have their place, but the ability to create meaning and value from all aspects of experience, including those that once seemed purely painful or limiting. The journey from dismissed dreamer to recognized innovator wasn't about proving skeptics wrong or roles reversed, but about persisting in the creation of something genuinely valuable, something that eventually became undeniable, not because others validated it, but because its inherent worth could no longer be overlooked. That persistence, continuing to build and refine and advance a vision others couldn't yet see, represents the core lesson of my journey, the insight I most hope to share through mentoring, writing, foundation work, and leadership. Innovation requires not just technical brilliance or market understanding, but the courage to pursue possibilities others dismiss as impractical, not to prove critics wrong, but because you recognize value they can't yet see. As David and I turn back toward home, the future stretches before us with expanding possibilities. Parker Sentinel's continued growth, the Foundation's expanding impact, potential new books, MIT board service and personal connection deepening in unexpected ways. None of these developments erases the past, the dismissal, the nickname, the years of working without family support or understanding. But they transform that history into foundation rather than limitation, integrating all aspects of experience into something stronger and more complete than would have been possible without those challenges. And in that integration lies the final insight of my journey. True success isn't measured by proving skeptics wrong or achieving external validation, but by creating something so aligned with authentic purpose that its value eventually becomes undeniable, not just to others, but first and most importantly, to yourself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.